Mr. Hans Ackerbaum, welcome to Rudaw, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. I think you missed Ethiopia in your introduction. I worked also in Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Okay, we will come to that. So, I want to start with this. You started your new mission as Netherlands Consul General in Erbil last August and the start of September. 3 months in Kurdistan so far. What was your idea about Kurdistan, and how did you find it here?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's for me, indeed, it was the first time being here in Kurdistan, even in Iraq, first time. I traveled to many places. I worked, as you said in your introduction, in many countries. But then, for the first time being in Kurdistan, it was a big surprise for me. And previously, the last 2 years, I was working in Kabul, in Afghanistan. And there I had completely no freedom. I traveled always with my bodyguards. I was living behind high walls, no freedom at all. So then I arrived here late August in Erbil, and I was completely surprised to see that how modern your city is and how modern your region is, how open and friendly the Kurds are. So it was for me a complete new world, and I was so happy. I can tell you, I was so happy to start working here in the Kurdistan region.
You served in Kabul for 2 years before coming to Kurdistan. How was it there? Can you tell me about your experience in Afghanistan?
Completely different what I experienced here. In Afghanistan, it's a country in war. The people survive from day to day. It's a very difficult country for the people living there, but also for me, like a diplomat working there. Lot of things has to do, of course, with politics. Same here, and diplomats, they love doing politics and following politics. But of course, in Kabul, we had to face also many terrorist attacks. We always had to be very careful how to travel, where to go to, what kind of meetings, etc. So it was very interesting, but for a diplomat, very interesting. But I think to live there at the moment, it is very hard.
Yeah, unfortunately. Given your 2 years of experience in Afghanistan, I can say that lots of things in the Kurdish culture might be familiar for you, especially we are talking about Middle East, music, other stuff. So also in terms of the diversity of the society, also like the religious groups, different ethnic groups as well. How is that helping you here?
I suppose that's experience you gain as a diplomat. I'm working now 20 years for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and working in countries like Afghanistan, but also in Yemen was my first posting, as you mentioned, Angola, Ethiopia, but even Singapore, a very modern country. You gain a lot of experiences. You meet people, you meet different cultures, you meet different religions, you're working with tribes, you're working with governments, you're even dealing with terrorist groups, etc. And with all this kind of experience, it's after a while you become a little bit, in a way, a kind of expert in the Middle East, expert in countries, more quite difficult countries. And sometimes people ask me, why do I want to go to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to Angola? And I think, we have within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs different groups of people, and with some specialists. For example, some of my colleagues, they know all about the EU in Brussels.
Mm-hmm.
Others, they know all about the UN and working in New York, for example. And others, they are very specialized in the field of Africa or South America. They speak their languages, etc., etc. And with my experiences as a diplomat in all those more or less different and difficult countries, I feel at home at these kind of places. So that's why also when I arrived late August, I directly feel at home. The culture, the food, the weather, the people. I really feel at home living here in Erbil.
Welcome. You served in, as you mentioned, and I mentioned in my intro as well, in Yemen, Singapore, Angola, Ethiopia. Interesting places. All those places they have different stories and different actually challenges as well. What are the challenges of being a diplomat in such an atmosphere?
First of all, you have to be very flexible. You have to, you should be able to live and work everywhere. So if you start working as a diplomat, they can send you everywhere, from Bangladesh to New York, to Cape Town, to Erbil. So you should be open for that. So flexibility, I think, very, very important. And I think also that you are willing to learn, that you're open for other cultures, so that you're all the time, every 2, 3 or 4 years, that you're really open for jumping into a new culture, meeting new people, trying to learn the language, although Kurdish is quite difficult, I have to say. And you have to enjoy that. And of course your family, they have to enjoy that, because here I'm alone, because it's as we call it, a non-family posting, due to what happened in the past here in Iraq. But for example, my family joined me to Singapore, they joined me to Ethiopia. My kids went there to an international school. So it is also quite a burden in a way for your partner and also for the children, because every year or every 3 years or every 4 years they have to move to another country, they have to make new friends, they have to go to new schools, etc., etc. So it's not only the shiny world we are working and living in.
Right. I want to ask something. You mentioned that in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs there are people expert in, like, each group of people are expert in a part of the world. Is there a personal choice to be in a place? Like, when I go through your career, you really worked in tough places, like Yemen, Afghanistan, now in Erbil, like consider as Iraq, Ethiopia, Angola. Those are places with challenges. Was this all a personal choice?
In the end, yes. Of course, my ministry, they're looking at your background. And before I start working as a diplomat, I worked for the Red Cross. So I worked already in war zones. So when I applied to become a diplomat, they knew that I can work in those kind of places. So my first posting again was Yemen. After a while, they offered me also a job, for example, in Brussels. I had the option Brussels or Ethiopia. And then I picked Ethiopia because I'm more suitable working in a country like that than, with all respect, because Brussels is also an amazing place to work and live. But I'm not an EU expert. And the politics within the EU is very, very interesting. but I know more about the Middle East, countries like Afghanistan and those kind of places. That is really my interest.
Back to Kurdistan. On Monday, KRI Prime Minister Masroor Barzani met with Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte. And Prime Minister Barzani said in a tweet, and here I quote, "Our strong partnership with the Netherlands will bring new investment to Kurdistan, new opportunities for Dutch businesses, and closer cooperation on security." End of quote. Also, Prime Minister Rutte tweeted, "In my meeting with Prime Minister Barzani, we discussed topics such as security in the region, migration, and stepping up bilateral cooperation in agriculture." How Netherlands and Kurdistan region are working together to bring Dutch investors to Kurdistan.
Yeah, it's a very big honor that your Prime Minister visited the Netherlands. He had a meeting with my Prime Minister, and they felt that this mutual understanding, as friends even. We are small countries. If you look at the Kurdistan region, if you look at the Netherlands, I think size-wise we are more or less the same.
Yes.
We have, of course, a little bit more people, around 17 million, but we only survive by others. So we only survive being traders. So we deal with Germany, we deal with UK, we deal with Iraq. That is how we survive. So we are traders. We try to, later on we will talk about agriculture, I suppose. So we try to survive like dealing and wheeling with other countries and nations. Not so much involved in politics like other countries, but more for business, etc. Your beautiful region, of course, it has a lot of potential in the field of agriculture. You import a lot from Turkey, from Iran, from other places. The quality is not always very good. Price-wise, you pay a lot. And of course, in the early days, you know that agriculture can be very important for the Kurdistan region. Especially if you look now, the oil price is very low. I had a meeting with your president and with the prime minister. Diversification is very, very important in Kurdistan. Very important. Your government, they really want to push this agriculture program. And the Netherlands, it's quite amazing. Again, we are a small country, but we are the second largest exporter in the field of agriculture. Number one is, of course, the United States, but then we are the number two for such a small country. So that's why also the Kurdistan region is looking to the Netherlands. How can we work together? And that was also discussed between the two prime ministers, your prime minister and my prime minister in The Hague in the Netherlands, to see how we can work together. Having investors from the Netherlands supporting here your farmers and your investors here, bringing new high-tech solutions in the field of agriculture and water management, bringing products useful like glass houses, etc., high-tech, bringing to Kurdistan region. And what's important, and I think that's the reason why we are so close together, is that at the moment there are around 6,000 to 7,000 Dutch-speaking Kurds in Kurdistan. So those thousands of Kurds, they have a Dutch passport, or not all, but a lot of them, they have Dutch passport. They studied in the Netherlands, they worked in the Netherlands, they went to school, they have their Dutch friends, they went to our shopping malls in the Netherlands, they went to our garden centers in the Netherlands, they visited farmers. And what you can see these days here in Erbil, in Suleimania, in Duhok, is that many of those Kurds, they start more or less the same business, what they experienced and what they have seen in the Netherlands. We're going to support them as the Netherlands.
The main concern for any investor anywhere in the world is a guarantee. What are the guarantees KRG is providing for Dutch investments?
That's a very good question. Investors, they want to play safe, and they want to play Dutch investors and Dutch entrepreneurs. They want to play according to the books, and that is sometimes a issue where we deal with as a Dutch consulate, because the banking system here in Kurdistan is, to put it mildly, not very advanced. And if a Dutch investor is working together with a Kurdish investor, they ask questions. How can I get my investment back? Or what about the profits? How can I receive my profits, etc., etc. Of course, they are entrepreneurs and they're very creative, etc. But Dutch entrepreneurs, they play by the book. So they want to be for 100% secure that it's safe, that the investments, they will get the money back one day. And sometimes, we are talking on that subject with the government, how to improve also this legal framework, this banking system, how can we improve that? But not only that. At the moment, we are also, for example, discussing with your government how to undermine or how to get rid of the red tape, because there's a lot of bureaucratic steps to make. For example, for startups to start a business here in the Kurdistan region. So we were contacted by your government to see if we can support the government, how to work on that, because we have a lot of experiences in the Netherlands. If you look at startups, for example, Amsterdam is one of those startup hubs in the world, besides of course Berlin and London and other big cities, and as the Netherlands consulate, we're also having some programs for supporting startups, nothing to do with the Netherlands, so we support startups, Kurdish startups, but then they face quite a lot of issues and problems and red tape, etc., etc. So we're working on that too, together with your government.
So I feel that you're positive. Do you hope that, you're in contact and in touch with the government, do you think that in the next few years there will be a lot of facilitation for startups in Kurdistan?
I'm a very positive person. I don't think you should be a diplomat when you're a negative person. So I'm very positive. And of course, it costs a lot of time and energy to improve bureaucratic systems within any government, all over the world, because you have, of course, many civil servants like me who are completely stuck in the system. Hard to have those men and women move to another output. So that will take time, but step by step, I'm sure that your government will improve the system. And my personal idea is that startups, you need startups for economic growth. And we talked about agriculture, but new young entrepreneurs, it's so important for every country, and also here in Kurdistan region, to have them on board, because they are the bright kids and bright future.
What's the size of Dutch investment in Kurdistan right now? In which sectors those investments are?
At the moment, the exact amount I don't know. Especially as we discussed about the official banking sector, we don't know how much money it's coming and going. The main sector is agriculture. For example, there are some big investments. For example, just outside Erbil, they're working on a World Horti Center, and that's more or less an exact copy of the World Horti Center in the Netherlands, in Naaldwijk. Some Dutch investors are in that program. We have in Sulemania, we have some Dutch Kurdish entrepreneurs. They're very active in gardening and in plants, flowers, etc. It's kind of garden center, but then more wider than that. They do parks, they do everything. In Dutch we call it tuincentrum. A little bit further, if you go to Halabja, I visited Halabja last week. There are some investors having goats, so they're importing at the moment hundreds of goat. That's for goat cheese, and what they also surprisingly told me that they're going to use the goat milk for goat ice creams. I never heard about that, but there's a market for it. If you look for in Duhok, potatoes, we're working on in the field of potatoes. And it's not only the investors who are putting money in it. We, as the Netherlands government, we have also programs, because we support Dutch companies and Kurdish companies to be together and to invest together. We call them PPP, the public-private partnerships. And as a Dutch government, we are willing to fund those kind of investments. So besides startups, we're also funding the bigger companies to have a big advantage, a win-win for the Kurdish region and also for the Netherlands.
When you started your work here, you met with Kurdistan region president, Mr. Neshirvan Barzani. Then you tweeted that, quote, "Thank you for our open and frank discussion." I want to ask about that frank discussion. How did it go? How was it? What did you discuss?
It was a very, very pleasant meeting. Your president is a very open and friendly gentleman. He knows a lot about the Netherlands. He visited the Netherlands. So it was a very, as I said on my Twitter, open and frank discussion. We discussed mainly trade. This subject is all the time coming back. So we had a discussion on, again, agriculture, water management, and we discussed also our progress in the field of startups. And your president told me, what I didn't communicate via Twitter, that he would like also to join or to join one day one of our startup sessions, because we have a training program. Every year we train around 40 startups together with M-Select, that's a local company, sponsored by, for example, AsiaCell and other big companies. But the president invited himself to join one day the startups here in Kurdistan.
You also met with Prime Minister Masroor Barzani when you started your work here. There also you discussed trade, investment, and security. What was Prime Minister Barzani's views on those topics, especially security?
Your Prime Minister Masroor Barzani, he thanked the Netherlands for the support for the last years against ISIS. The Netherlands is part of the coalition, and we supported you to fight against ISIS. And we are working on the so-called Peshmerga reform. The Netherlands is working together with Germany, the United States, and the UK in the program, again, called the Peshmerga reform. So we work together, And your prime minister Masroor Barzani, he thanked the Netherlands for working in this field of securing.
Yeah, I want to come back on to agriculture and ask more question about that field, because most of the work you do here is actually agriculture sector. Netherlands, as you said, is the second largest exporter of fresh fruits and vegetables in the world. In an interview with Rudaw Radio in August, Netherlands Consul General in Erbil, Mr. William Kusin, said they want to make Kurdistan region a big exporter of agriculture products. What are the key gaps in terms of policy to achieve that in Kurdistan, given Netherlands' experience in KRG?
First of all is knowledge. Knowledge is very important. You have many investors willing to jump into the field of agriculture. But what they lack is knowledge. They have the money, but they don't know how to do it. So what they sometimes do is they connect with other countries to see where can they have the knowledge, where can they have the quality. And luckily they know that the Netherlands is on the high end if you look in the field of agriculture. So they knock at our door, the Consulate General in Erbil, and they want to share their ideas. And what we see is that there's a big gap. And for that, we are working together with a university in the Netherlands. It's called Wageningen University. And Wageningen University is a high-tech agricultural university. People say it's the best in the world. It's full of international students from wherever. But this university, they're so advanced in all new techniques. For example, during the recession now, also in the Netherlands, economic downfall, we use a lot of empty buildings. We use them as farmhouses. So the high-rise empty offices, they are now farmhouses. And that's very strange because there are no fields. The rooms are completely without any windows, so it's artificial lighting. But it's the future. So we don't need endless fields, etc. We can also do our farming business within a building, and that's even maybe better because if you look, if it's concealed without windows, you don't need pesticides, for example. It's available, it's nearby, it's in the big cities. They call it sometimes also urban farming. So a university like Wageningen University is working on all those new techniques. So that's one. Knowledge is very important. Secondly, of course, you need the cash, you need the money. We have a saying in the Netherlands that just for 1 penny you cannot expect the best. So if you are really a professional entrepreneur and you want to grow quality stuff, you really need to invest in good products, and then you can knock on our door.
Netherlands has got many projects of agriculture in the Kurdistan region, especially the field of building greenhouses, as you mentioned. Could you please tell us more about those projects and their progress?
Yes, those greenhouses, most of the time you see greenhouses made out of plastic. They're very cheap, etc. If you look here in Kurdistan, it's quite in winter. It's cold. It's wet. Yeah. I have to experience it still. The weather now, it's still lovely outside. But winters are quite dark. to be effective in the field of agriculture, and if you want to produce 12 months the whole year, you need professional equipment. And that means also that you need high-tech glass houses. So you should not use plastic covers, etc., but you need high-tech glass houses with high-tech temperature control systems, computers, etc., etc. Yesterday, your mission in the Netherlands, they visited the World Horti Center in Naaldwijk, and your ministers, they experienced themselves how it is to deal with those kind of professional glass houses. And hopefully with their new knowledge, what they learned in the Netherlands, your investors here are convinced that they should invest in those top market, high-end products.
You had a meeting with Agriculture Minister Begar Talabani. You're working on creating a joint advisory group. Can you tell us about that advisory group?
The joint advisory group consists of specialists from the Kurdistan region and from the Netherlands. And they are specialists in the field of agriculture and water management. They will start in January, and they will discuss what are the priorities within the Kurdistan region to invest if you look into agriculture. Because at the moment, a lot of entrepreneurs, government, etc., they want to do a lot, but they don't know exactly where to start. So with this advisory group of specialists, they try to support all those investors, but also the government, for prioritizing what to do in the field of agriculture and water management. Because you cannot start everywhere. You have to make your priorities step by step. And that's the goal of the team. And for that, we're also looking then thereafter what kind of investors do we need for those priorities, and where can we find those investors.
To improve the agriculture sector, it's not enough to enhance the level of production, but it's also need to sorting facilities, and most importantly finding market for the products. How can the Netherlands help Kurdistan in this regard, both with regards of investment and formulating a policy as well?
Yeah, that's a very good question. People like to produce, people like to have products, but then what will happen thereafter? For example, you're a producer of flowers, and so you grow beautiful flowers. But what's next? You have your flowers, but how can you sell your flowers? And where to can you sell the flowers? So our advisors from the Netherlands, they look at the value chain, so-called the value chain. So they look what you have to do if you grow the flowers until the moment you're going to sell the flowers, and everything in between. So they look at quality, as we discussed about the glass houses, what kind of soil you need, when do you cut the flowers. Thereafter, they look how to transport the flowers, what kind of cooling technique is needed for the lifespan of those flowers. Where are the markets? How can we do the packaging of those flowers that they look presentable? So all those small steps, it's very important to take those small steps into consideration, especially if you want to export those flowers, or if you want to sell those flowers on a high on a market where people really want to pay good money for their products.
Netherlands have arranged many courses for Kurdish farmers. What do you teach Kurdish farmers? And what are the key areas in which the Kurdish farmers need education?
Yeah, that is very. I'm of course my my background is not as a farmer, but as I explained a little bit before, farming is quite difficult to do it well. You can be a basic farmer and grow stuff for your family or for your village, and that's it. But if you want to grow bigger, grow faster, if you expand your market to big cities and even to other areas, to other areas within Iraq, for example, your quality has to be perfect. And not only today, but also tomorrow and the next week, etc. So your quality should be all the time the best. And that's very difficult. How can you really produce the best quality? And that's how we train the farmers.
I want to talk about startups and small businesses in Kurdistan region. You have the Orange Corner, where you help youth to start their projects. The first course was finished a few months ago, I think. A new one is starting. I don't know if it started. You can correct me on that. What results are you getting from the Orange Corner?
The Orange Corner, every year we train around 40 startups. 40 startups in the field of, you name it. That can be in the field of agriculture, that can be in the field of e-commerce, that can be in the field of transportation, anything. All those young, bright women and men, they apply to this program. And every year we have around 300, 400 or 500 applicants, but only 40 we will train. They are trained in the field of, for example, marketing. They're trained in the field of production. They're trained in the field of whatever. So they're supported by a team of experts. They're trained by, for example, big companies, successful companies. They are trained by social media specialists. They are trained by managers of factories, how to produce certain products. But of course, for a startup, it's very difficult to begin, to start. And most startups, and that is also more or less all over the world, are around 80%, they will not succeed. So what we do during those training sessions is to support them, to train them on all those different kind of aspects. What we sometimes thereafter experience is that some of those startups, they have to stop because they face a lot of red tape, bureaucracy to start their company. For example, finding a name and putting a name forward for your company, that takes already a long time. And that's frustrating for those young entrepreneurs. If you have a nice name for your company and first you have to wait for a selection that this name is suitable for you, that frustrates an entrepreneur. This is an example. But there are, of course, a lot of other examples that's very difficult for an entrepreneur. The banking system we already discussed, opening a bank account, etc., etc. So what we do as the Netherlands is trying to support, together with your government, all those startups to push a little bit further, that we will give them from next year onward seed money, so they receive amount of money from the Netherlands government, and we try to, together with the Kurdistan region, the government, we try to solve those bureaucratic hurdles. So we are sitting together, and for example, the end of this month, we are sitting together with government, with startups, with my consulate general, and with experts, and we're going to discuss wide open, brainstorming, what are the problems, what are the bottlenecks, what are the hurdles to be a good entrepreneur. and hopefully together, all of us, we can solve some of those problems.
You have military trainers in Kurdistan region. You have also a plan called the Dutch Plan, as you said. You talked about it to organize the Peshmerga forces. Can you tell us about the plan and its progress? Where is it right now?
The Peshmerga reform program, we're working together with Germany, the United States, and the UK. We have a military advisor for that, and also the diplomats from my team within the consulate. They're working on that. There are many ambitious plans. There are many programs and many ideas how to reform the Peshmerga. The military advisors, they sit together, they work on those plans, they work on the outcomes, and they connect with the diplomats and with the governmental officials. And in this, and I think that is a very nice combination. So politics are involved, diplomats are involved, the military are involved, and in this way we hope to have a much better Peshmerga.
Is the plan going as it was planned for? Especially I'm talking about time frame and time-wise.
I don't know exactly when it started. I arrived in late August.
Yeah, 3 months.
I don't know also the time frame. Today I spoke with our military advisor, and he was very positive about the progress. I don't know all the details, but things are moving. Of course, there are still the issues. We talked about business and we talked about other things, and of course there are always hurdles, bottlenecks, etc., etc.
When you met Kurdistan region president and prime minister, have you? Of course, you talked about security and Peshmerga reform. Also, as a diplomat, you meet with politicians and political parties in Kurdistan. Do you see the political will among Kurdistan region politicians and decision makers for this reform? Because we know this is not just about organizing the Peshmerga. It's not just the technical side. The most important thing is the political will. This Peshmerga reform have been around since it's been more than even before the Dutch plan started. There was a lot of talks about Peshmerga reform, but it didn't happen, and one of the reasons is agreement between decision makers and politicians. It's on a political level. When you meet them, do you feel that political will from different sides?
The last weeks after I started here in Kurdistan region, I met a lot of political players and political actors. I had a meeting with Goran, I had a meeting with PUK, I had a meeting with KTP, and of course we discussed subjects like what we discussed today about economic growth, agriculture, our bilateral relations, and of course also security. And during all those talks already I had, my feeling is that from all political sides, they're all agreeing that there should be a reform. And they all, of course, maybe they're only friendly, but I think we had open and frank discussions that they meant that they're all very happy that the Netherlands, together with the United States, together with Germany, together with the United Kingdom, that they're all happy that we are trying to support this Peshmerga reform. So I have the feeling, as a diplomat, that indeed the will is there, the willingness is there, but of course, we have to. It's a long way still.
I want to ask a few last questions. They're not gonna be political questions, and I think it will be easier to answer. You started your work here in late August, and on September 18th, one of the staff of the consulate prepared a homemade Kurdish dolma. Yeah, I think that was your first dolma here. Tell us about it. How was it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah,
I know in the consulate you always have share food, and it's a
Yes.
very friendly atmosphere
Yes,
there.
yes. Now, first of all, I love food, so I'm a kind of foodie, and I love non-Dutch food. Of course, Dutch food is also quite fun sometimes, but I love your food. I'm really fond of it. So what we try, and also today during lunch, that every day we try to taste something from your kitchen. So today, of course, we had our kebab. I will not make advertisement for the restaurant where we bought it, but it was amazing. And the same what we sometimes do is some of our colleagues, our Kurdish colleagues, they like to cook. And in this instance, the mother of our economic affairs colleague, she made this lovely dolma, and it was my first time that I ate this meal, and I have to say it was amazing, really.
We had the Indian consul here, and we talked about food. He told me dolma is great, but less sour. If it was only a little bit less sour. Do you have the same, or it was all okay for you?
No, it was okay for me. For me. Yeah, it's, of course, if you compare it to Indian food is more spicy.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me even too spicy. But dolma was, especially it was so nicely home cooked. And they say, the best food is home cooked food. I don't know if it's true, but
You described yourself as you said now, as a foodie person. I even saw pictures of you even when you were in Afghanistan. You were trying local food, Afghanistani food, and here you're trying Kurdish food. And I also saw a picture of you of having kebab. So it seems like you're enjoying food here in Erbil. Mr. William Kosin, the former consul, he told me that he gained 5-6 kilos when he was in Kurdistan. Didn't he warn you about this?
No, he didn't tell me about it. But my local colleague, I will not name his name, but he knows who. But he said, "No, Hans, your belly is expanding a little bit." So only after 3 months. So luckily, I'm a runner. I'm running a lot, also here in Erbil. So but I think I have to sport a little bit more. So if my colleague is making already the remark that suddenly you can see my belly, I have to do more sport, because I still continue eating, because it's a kind of addiction. I cannot stop eating your beautiful food.
You just started. You still have 1 year and I think 9 months
Exactly.
left to try food.
Yeah.
You're going to gym or just running?
No, just running.
Just running.
Yes.
What was the surprise when you came here for you in the Kurdish culture? Something that you didn't expect?
The surprise is, I think, the openness. That I didn't expect that you're very outgoing. That you like to show off your beautiful cars, your showing off with how people look, and especially when the weather was a little bit warmer than today, that your restaurants and terraces are completely packed on Thursday evening and Friday evening, and that was for me not a shock, but after Afghanistan, it was completely getting used to it again, and I love it.
Here you have more freedom, and I think you can drive and go out. You didn't have that in Afghanistan due to security reasons. Do you just work, or what do you do in your free time?
We I have to say we work a lot. We make long days. It's a small team, and there's a lot of ambition. There's a lot of work, because if you have ambition, you create a lot of work. So we make long days, morning 9 and sometimes until 9 in the evening. So 12 hours we're sometimes at the office. In the evening, I have my official meetings. I have my dinners. Although, of course, with COVID, it's less than normal. But I have my meetings with other consul generals. I have meetings with investors, with governmental officials. So it is a busy time here in Erbil. And of course I travel. I try to visit your region as much as possible.
Places. You were in Halabja, Suleimania, Dukan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Lake Dukan, on a boat.
Explored the
area, and so I really want to travel the coming years.
And do you find any difficulties finding Dutch products here? Cheese, good coffee, or you're okay with that? You get it easily.
No, that was maybe also a big surprise indeed. That nearby my apartment, there is a supermarket called Holland, and there are more supermarkets called Holland. And if I enter the supermarket, I can see so many products from the Netherlands. For example, the pancakes, the beans, ice cream, a lot of stuff from the Netherlands, and also a lot of stuff from my supermarket in the Netherlands. It's called Jumbo, and I see the same Jumbo beans here that I buy also in the Netherlands in my supermarket. The price is double, but it's fair.
My last question: you wrote a novel, a fiction novel about Yemen. The story is in Yemen, and I think you took that from your experience. It's a fiction one, but you were there. You had an experience about Yemen. It's about a person who's missing. Can you tell me about it? Is it published? Right?
It's not yet. No,
not yet. End of the year.
The 20th of November.
20th.
Yeah.
Of November.
Yeah, it is in Dutch. It is it's a novel, a thriller. And as a diplomat, you experience a lot. You see a lot. You meet a lot of people. And during my days in Afghanistan, where I was not able to travel a lot, I was in the evenings within the compound. I started to write this novel, and a publisher in the Netherlands, they liked my manuscript, and they said, we want to publish. So this book will be there at the end of this month. It is in Dutch. Hopefully one day there will be in translation in other languages, but it's nice for me to have this book.
I hope to see it in Kurdish.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Hans Akkerboom, I thank you very much for your time to have this interview with us at Rudaw Radio.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.